Hey everyone! Today I want to talk about one of South America's greatest secrets, the Wari. What's a Wari, you ask? The Wari were a group of people who lived in Peru 1500 years ago. They overtook the Nazca and built a civilization that controlled more territory than any other Andean culture up until the Inca. But they didn't conquer all that land how you might think. They created an economic sphere of influence that later cultures would use as their blueprint to turn Peru into the greatest empire in the Americas. This is the story of the Wari. Don't forget to hit that like button and let's dive into this. Before I begin, I want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. A Wari legacy that extends well beyond the borders of Peru and has gone on to affect each and every one of our daily lives. The Wari left us an important gift. Potatoes! Hold on a second. I thought Ireland... Nope. It was South America. We had them to thank for our favorite carb. The Wari loved potatoes and cultivated 1,200 different species. So the next time you're chowing down on some fries or enjoying your loaded baked potato, thank the Wari and their neighbors. They walked so we could run. Speaking of running, let's talk about the Inca and how they relate to the Wari. The Inca were South America's largest empire, spanning all the way from Ecuador to southern Chile. Throughout the empire, the Inca would utilize an expansive network of roads where runners called chotskis would deliver messages across the entire country. They built out a vast trade network, and with the help of a revolutionary agriculture system, they transformed the Andes into a prosperous nation. Oh, and they really liked llamas, but more about that later. Now, as impressive as all that is, here's the thing. All of that stuff I just mentioned, it all originated from, you guessed it, the Wari. Which brings up an interesting question. Why have so many people never heard of the Wari? Why did I have to mention the Inca for you to have a chance of even finding this video? The answer is simple. The Wari never built a giant thing. A giant thing? What do I even mean by that? Well, when you look at the Wari culture, there's not really an icon that defines them. There's no mysterious geoglyphs sprawled across the desert floor, there's no giant pyramids hidden in the jungle, and they never did anything like build a luxurious summer palace on the side of a mountain. They kept their architecture simple, and it's one of the reasons most people have never heard of them. Here's a pro tip for all you ancient cultures out there. If you want to be put on the map, you need to build something that people can attribute to aliens. That's how you get a spiffy TV series. Too bad the Wari didn't understand television, but what they did understand was how to expand. And to do that, they needed to solve their biggest problem: food! It turns out that you humans have to eat, and if you can't grow enough food to support your current population, you won't be able to expand any further. This is what kept the other cultures such as the Moche and the Nazca from expanding. The Nazca relied on aqueducts to carry water down from the mountains, but unfortunately, that system doesn't scale, and the Nazca were confined to Peru's coastal deserts. This was also the case for most of the other cultures in the region. Growing food in large quantities is difficult, and it wasn't until two different cultures, the Wari and the Tiahuanaca, developed new methods of farming that this started to change. By 700 AD, both groups used their innovations in agriculture to greatly expand their territories, and eventually, the two would come to share a border. Oh boy, you know what that means. Actually, these guys are pretty cool. Archaeologists haven't found any evidence of direct fighting between the two cultures. Still, we do see evidence of resource competition, and when these two farming systems went head to head, the Wari came out on top. But before we get to that, we need to take a step back and look at how these cultures solved their farming problems. Remember, this is about food, and how you grow it depends on where you live. For the Tiahuanaca, you start with what you have, a massive lake. Their civilization began on the southern edge of Lake Titicaca. And their biggest challenge was weather consistency. The region was prone to extreme droughts and flooding, making it difficult to sustain a healthy planting season. Too much water kills your plants, and too little water also kills your plants. The solution was the creation of man-made canals that pulled water from the lake. These canals would carry the water to their fields, which would then be raised above the waterline, allowing a steady flow of nutrients to the crops. We call this raised field farming, but the Tiahuanaca had their own name for it, waru. But unfortunately, this system has some drawbacks. It requires large amounts of water from neighboring rivers and lakes, and the source of that water came from the highlands, where the Wari were about to change farming forever. The Wari had a problem. A big problem. How big? Let's just say the Wari had to contend with the Andes Mountains. And they weren't going to let a small thing like the largest mountain range in the world stop them from spreading their influence. But what is it about mountains that makes them so bad for farming? I mean, I know fields are supposed to be flat and all, but couldn't you just plant crops along the sides of the mountains like this? There we go. Problem solved. I call it mountain farming. Hey wait, is it raining? My crops! The issue with planting crops on a slope is that when it rains, you have soil erosion. This destroys your crops and can damage your entire field. Thankfully, the Wari came up with a brilliant solution to their lack of flat land. They made their own. The secret to the Wari's expansion into one of South America's most dominant cultures was the invention of terrace farming. Now, I'm guessing you are all familiar with terrace farming. Whether it be the slopes of Machu Picchu or the rice fields in Asia, this style of farming is popular all over the world. But they don't work how you might think. Terrace farming isn't just about increasing the amount of flat land. It's an entire farming system. These step-like terraces not only help prevent soil erosion from water runoff, but also acted like giant planters that allow the Wari to till the soil and cycle different crops. Think of them like super-sized flower pots. To water these terraces, the Wari constructed a complex irrigation system made up of canals and aqueducts that moved the water down the steps of the mountain. It was an incredibly efficient system, which came in pretty handy when the region experienced prolonged droughts. But wait, Napkin, didn't you say the Tiahuanaca had access to the lakes and rivers? How did the Wari come out ahead? Even if their system was efficient, you still need access to that water. You're right, they do. Water doesn't come from lakes. That's the endpoint of the journey. The water in lakes comes from rivers that flow from higher to lower elevations. The Wari lived in the highlands, and while we don't see evidence of direct fighting between the two cultures, by 1000 AD, the Tiahuanaca culture started to fade. So they knew how to grow plants. But I don't see what's so great about growing potatoes. You take that back. Still, you're right. There's more to territorial expansion than simply growing food. You also have to get from point A to point B. So let's talk about roads. The Wari road network covered vast stretches of the highland regions throughout the Andes, connecting various city centers and satellite communities. But building roads isn't just about creating a footpath for people to move along. Building roads can create some problems. Let's say you want me to do something, like herd your llamas. Well, now, I'm all the way over here, and I don't care what you want me to do. Roads create separation, which makes it difficult for one culture to maintain its influence over its people. But the Wari came up with a brilliant system, and the Inca would later utilize that system to control their vast empire. However, before we can even think about managing our vast network of satellite states, we first need to build out our network of roads and get people moving. Okay, I'm tired. Can we set up a city here? Why not? Oh, right. Water. I feel like this keeps coming up. But what do? I'm tired and my feet hurt. I know I don't have feet. That's not the point. Oh, hey, look, a rest house. And they have beer. In order to sustain their extensive network of roads, the Wari built rest houses called tombos all throughout their territory. These tombos also served another purpose beyond resting my aching feet. They became centers of trade, which provided various cities a halfway point to meet and exchange goods. They would carry these goods in elongated vessels called caro jars, and today we find several of them filled with corned beer. So now we have our satellite cities and a healthy trade network. But how do I make sure my people don't get any crazy ideas like independence? You start by making sure your territories are flourishing under your influence. This works really well when you give them beer, but if that doesn't work, you can always establish footholds into the territories you're expanding into. Imagine yourself in a new town. You're starving for something to eat, and you see those golden arches. Finally, you sink your teeth into some sliced potatoes boiled in fat, and now you're hooked. After that, you're done growing your own potatoes. You want those delicious Wari labeled taters. This is known as branding, and the Wari placed their outposts all throughout their territory where people could trade, exchange ideas, and be met with a healthy show of force. That's right, if potatoes and beer don't work, you can always rely on military prowess. Several Wari outposts served as military strongholds, contributing to the defense of the newly acquired territory. These bases were strategically placed across the border and acted as a deterrent for potential invaders. And these settlements needed to be protected too, because the Wari had another trick up their sleeve. A secret the Inca would later adapt to fund the expansion of their empire. Llamas! Llamas? How did they? I'm getting to it. South Americans loved their llamas. Unlike Central America, which didn't have any beast of burden, South America was fortunate enough to have llamas and alpacas. These animals could be used for their wool, transportation, and they ate them? Well, I guess if you don't have access to cows, llama meat's the next best thing. The Wari were herding animals for trade and labor. I wonder why no one else thought of that. They did. The whole region was raising these animals, but the Wari did something no one else did. Take a look at one of their cities. The first thing you'll notice is that it's very boxy, with several small rooms built at right angles. You might even call it boring. Their cities were surrounded by stone walls and built along a grid system. Just outside the city were massive animal enclosures that could house up to 1,000 different animals. In terms of design, it's not all that impressive. I mean, just look at the structures the Tiahuanaca built. Decorative stones tightly packed with carved stone heads embedded in the walls. It's incredible to look at. And believe it or not, this architectural difference was the key to the Wari's success. Take a look at the Wari capital located in the Ayacucho Basin. The city is called Wari and has an impressive wall surrounding a city built on a grid system next to a massive animal pen. Now let's look at a few of the outposts, starting with Viracocha Pampa in the north. I hope that's right. It has an impressive wall surrounding a city built on a grid next to a massive animal pen. Next up, we have Picalacta to the south. It has an impressive wall surrounding a city built along a grid system. Are you noticing a pattern here? There's a reason not every ancient city built a massive pyramid or ceremonial structure. Those types of construction projects pull a lot of resources and are impossible to scale. What the Wari did was create a blueprint that could be rolled out and copied across different territories. This allowed the settlements to become similar to the state farms the Inca would later utilize. We find evidence of this from the excavation sites of Picalacta and Viracocha Pampa. Unlike the capital city of Wari, these settlements have very little evidence of large populations. This suggests that the Wari were exporting their labor to areas better suited for farming and creating state-sponsored farms. This strategy played a crucial role in the expansion of the Wari territory. It brought in more food, more animals, and more raw material that could be traded throughout the region. Over the course of a few centuries, the Wari grew to be the largest civilization in South America to date, and by 900 AD, they began to push into the lowlands. Following this, wait, what happened? Where did they go? Surprise! We have no idea. Okay, we do have some theories. Remember, this region is prone to droughts and extreme flooding. These extreme weather conditions played a crucial role in the demise of other cultures such as the Nazca and the Moche. We also believe that weather might have played a role in the fall of the Tiahuanaca civilization shortly before the Wari began their decline. What happened next was the rise of the Inca Empire. After the fall of the Wari and the Tiahuanaca civilization around 1000 AD, a power vacuum was created that allowed the Inca to become the sole power in the region. From 1400 to 1500 AD, the Inca would consume both the Wari and the Tiahuanaca's territory and grow to be— wait a second! If the Wari fell in 1000 AD and the Inca didn't start their expansion until 1400 AD, what happened in between? Okay, I'll be quick. You have a culture called the Chimu. The first ruler of the Chimu was a man by the name of Tai Kanamu, and when he arrived, he made an astonishing discovery. A culture, thought to have been forgotten, had survived. And the meeting of these two cultures marked the end of one of South America's most prolific civilizations, the Moche. But unfortunately, we're out of time, so I guess we'll have to leave the Moche for another video. Until then, I want to thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you next time, and don't forget to bring snacks.